Hey team, I wanted to take a minute just to go through Drupal aggregation and cache busting and explain some misconceptions that we have and that I had, and some of you might already know this, but for those who don't, what I have here is a clear new instance of Drupal 11 with Oliviera team, and we all know that under configuration, performance, we can aggregate the assets, and when we make a change in the CSS file and we deploy it, all we need to do is clear cache and the new CSS file is going to be generated. That is not correct. So let me explain. I'm going to go to the home page and I'm going to look at the source code here, and we have two style sheets that are being aggregated. One is for the admin and the other one is for the Oliviera team. So if I open this, well, there's nothing much to see here, but if I open in the source code, the theme, and I'm going to change something in the base here, and just set up the color red, right? And I'll go ahead and clear the cache. So if I refresh this, you'll notice the color red now appears here. And if I look at the site, it reflects that. This is local, caching is very loose, so there's no issue here. However, if you look at the view source, this is before I refreshed it, right? Or it doesn't matter, I can refresh it now. And I'll copy the name of this file that I have previously opened. And you would expect that file name to change, but it does not. It remains the same regardless of the CSS change. Again, that's the misconception that we had in the past, or at least I had it, that if you make a change in the CSS file, any CSS file, and you clear the cache, Drupal will generate a new file or the signature. So to prove my point, I'm going to copy the whole URL here, the style sheet. And if I search for it, it shows here as one-to-one. If I change this to blue and I clear the cache, and if I refresh this, it stays the same. The file name, the CSS file name stays the same. And all the other parameters remain the same. And this is where that issue arises, where we make a change in CSS, we push it live, and a bunch of browsers, bunch of visitors that have been the visited site before and loaded the old style sheet, they don't see the new changes. They'll see the HTML change, but not the CSS change, because the browser has not been instructed to grab the new, to bust the cache and grab the new asset, right? And again, if I refresh this file and I do color blue now, it's reflected here. However, the file has not changed. What changes the file, in fact, is the library, the theme library, or in some cases you're going to have module library, but in this case it's theme library. And I already changed this from what it was before, but the original comes as version. And I'll explain also later what that means also. If I change this now to 1.00 or X, whatever, sorry, fat fingers today, and I clear the cache, because I changed that version, you will notice now that, again, before refreshing, after refreshing, if I search now, you see that the file has changed. And pay attention to this part. It says, if I change this now to 1.1 or 1.10 in this case, and I refresh it, notice that the signature changed. The file signature changed. And again, if I go to the base and I change this to green, I clear the cache, nothing changes. In the file, well, this one doesn't exist anymore, but in the file, green is there. See, color green. But it did not change the signature. And so back to the library, change it to 1.2, clear cache, pay attention to this. When I refresh it, it changes. So, and also if you change anything like an asset, so let's say if I remove the variables, those are going to be needed, but fonts, for example, if I remove the fonts, same thing. Just make sure that this line is deleted. Okay. So if I clear the cache, again, you will notice that the signature changes. So only library affects the change of the file and instructs the browsers to grab the new asset. That's important to know. And now if you really want to know and this is more for me, for my mental notes, but if you want to know how exactly the class works, this is Asset Resolver, which is part of the core, Drupal core, and there's this value CID, and the way this CID string is defined is through hashing the list of libraries to load. And if I go into here and I do var export and I do cache data, but before that I'm going to also do a CID, and I'm going to also do the libraries to load. Let's see. So if I do that into this, that should work. I'll do exit here just so you see what's happening. All right. So first we have that string, the CID string, which is the CSS, the theme name, and then the hash for the serialized list of these libraries. So these are the CSS files that we are loading into, compressing into this aggregated file. And this hash is generated based on serialization and hashing of this array. Once we have that, an asset is created. So you will notice that, well, I'll explain also how this file is being generated in a minute. But you will notice that now we have two groups. We have the admin group and the site group. And you will notice that the version for the main one is 1105. That comes from the Drupal class, which is here. This is the 1105 version. If I change this to 6, you will see that reflected here. Oops, no cache. So 1106, you see. This one is 1102. So if I change this back to 5, and I'm going to change this to version, what that will do is just it will reflect this constant. And again, remember it was a 1.102, and now it's going to no cache, and now it's going to be the same as the admin. So when we change that version, that signals to Drupal that it needs to generate a new file. And if you want to go even further on how that works, that string, when it's generated, it's stored. It's stored in a database. So there's a cache ID with that CID, and then if it finds it, it will return the cached value. If it doesn't find it, it's going to start building it. So it goes to the libraries to load, those 17 libraries that we had, and it's going to pre-process them and mimify them and do all that beautiful stuff. And then this is the optimizes the method that generates the file name, and that's the what's that class? I always forget. So I'm just going to open this service to find it. So right here. So it's Drupal. Close this. So this is the optimize method. It gets the libraries and some other parameters. But what's important here is the for the groups that I talked about earlier. These group 1 and group 100. It will loop through those admin and website groups, which is right about here, CSS groups. So each group, and then it generates a file name, which is CSS. So that's the same, and then generate a hash, right? That's CSS. So that's what we see in here. See, CSS underscore and then the hash CSS. And then the delta is the group 1 and 0. So if you look at the code here again, when it's grouping, it has order, and then order is defined as the delta. Where did I see delta? Probably not in this, but that's the actual the number. So it's just the key of the array. And then once it generates that hash, again, this is based on the libraries. So generate hash is defined based on whatever we're passing in as the asset data, which is again defined in the asset resolver on the line. I should memorize it here. So it's on the line 146 is where that is defined. All right. Hope this helps someone. And if you already knew this, this is a little refresher. Thank you for your time.